3 pages?
And no questions on fantasy?
3 pages?
Yeah. Does anyone have the grades from the Yahoo
We're not going to be
draft?
speaking about that.
I think we
either,
should, because one of us got an A.
The NFL is back. Can't wait. Jets, Giants this weekend. We'll see exactly who ends up in the Super Bowl. We got another podcast as well. NFL season doesn't get any better than that.
Yes, sir. Big Blue is hitting the reset button once again. But what is it going to take for Daniel Jones to actually make it to being a Giant next year?
And what's the deal with Zach Wilson? He was supposed to play week 1. Now he's out until week 4. The Jets have some explaining to do. Can they figure it out in time for the season?
Nope.
Well, actually, maybe. We've got Dangerous Dan the Jetman, Dan Leberfeld, the editor and publisher from Jets Confidential, will be joining us in just 1 second to answer that very question that Joe posed. And as always, we're recording this show from the PIX 11 Sports Department, high above 42nd Street.
It's not the same without Gary Meyer.
It's not, you're right. In the heart of New York City.
This is the PIX 11 New York Sports Nation podcast.
All right, everybody, as always, please rate, review us on Spotify and Apple. Be kind. If you give us that 30 seconds, we'll give you the 30-minute podcast for free. Heck, we aren't charging for it either way, but you know. We take donations.
We do take donations. Let's welcome in Dangerous Dan the Jetman. Dan, first of all, how long have you been publishing Jets Confidential?
We started the current format in 1995. So what would that make it, 27 years?
So safe to say you're an expert on the Jets.
But not math.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you never know with the years when you include the one at the beginning and the one at the end, that pushes it up to 28. So that was.
I agree. I'm the same way. I agree with you. It's
Dan, you're supposed to drag over the one.
It's a complicated calculus.
Dan, I say round up, round up. So speaking of rounding up, round up your opinion on Zach sitting out for 4 games. Could this be a positive for him?
Yeah, I think it could be a positive for him, no doubt. The last time we saw him, think about it, in that preseason game against the Philadelphia Eagles, on one series, he goes out there, throws an interception into triple coverage, telegraphed the pass, brought the linebacker over, Kaiser White with his eyes. It was so telegraphed. And then he goes in for another series, and there's been speculation that he wasn't even going to play an extra series if that first series had developed and gone a lot better. So he goes back out there, and he scrambles, cuts on the knee. So he hurt his knee scrambling, and we haven't seen him since. This isn't necessarily – I mean, it's never good to get hurt, and it's the same knee that he hurt last year against the New England Patriots, so you have to start worrying for the Jets about the right knee. But as far as the player, he still needs some work. It won't be the worst thing in the world for him to sit back for 3 weeks if that's what it is. Watch Joe Flacco perform in the games and prepare during the week. Because let's not forget, when Joe Flacco was the mentor for part of last year, he wasn't the starter most of the time. So you have a mentor, you're not watching him do his thing. Joe Flacco's been around a long time. I think it'll help Zach Wilson to watch Joe Flacco prepare for 3 weeks and play in these games, because the quarterback, Zach Wilson, has some work to do on going through his progressions, his pocket presence, his accuracy, so he can learn a few things from Flacco.
Joe, there was a lot of pressure on Zach Wilson coming into this year. Do you think having a month reprieve could help him?
No, I think it's going to put even more pressure on him, because I think he's going to come back and get the reins of the team regardless of how they're playing. And I honestly think that they're going to be in a better spot without him early on than they would with him. And so I think that's going to put more pressure, because we saw last year when Mike White went out there and in his first game, right, threw for a Hall of Fame debut.
Magic Mike.
Right, exactly. And then, even Joe Flacco, he had a solid season and was competent in the offense. And we haven't really seen that consistency at any time from Zach Wilson. So I think there's only going to be more pressure on him because I think Flacco will perform well. And I think they have more weapons that they had in the offseason for that purpose.
Moose, do you have a better answer, please?
No, that was a good answer. Yeah, I mean, I think there's whatever Flacco does, I think there's just going to be pressure on Wilson, because at 37, I think there's a ceiling to what Flacco is as a quarterback, and Obviously, Wilson was drafted second overall to be the team's franchise quarterback and to be a difference maker and be, Patrick Mahomes light and everything that we talked about when he was coming out of BYU and, the arm strength and off-platform throws and everything, modern NFL quarterback, he just has not looked the part. So he's not jumped off the screen. So whenever he does return, if it is indeed week 4 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's got to go out there and be the goods because this team, Joe Douglas put the right pieces around him offensively to be successful.
And you mentioned the off-platform throws. Robert Saleh told me this week that is his superpower. So he's not going to try and change the way that Zach Wilson plays when he goes out there, which is a huge red flag to me because look who he's going up against this week, right? The Jets are going up, and Lamar Jackson. He has run all over the place. And outside of last season, which you can argue about how healthy he actually was and whether that was a contract holdout at the end of it, but he has been durable despite the fact that he runs as much as he does. Zach Wilson got hurt scrambling last year. He gets hurt this year on a non-contact play. He was hurt at BYU in his sophomore season. So we have to start asking, is he a durable player? Can he stay on the field?
Why would you think that this team is going to be better suited with Joe Flacco in the first 3 games? They have a gauntlet for the first 3.
But it didn't matter. They were going to have that. Their schedule was their schedule, regardless of who it was that they were playing.
If Zach is able to come back week 4, I still see a strong possibility of them being 0-3.
Listen, I'm not saying that they won't, but again, we saw last year, even though they didn't win when Joe Flacco was under center, he looked competent. The offense looked like it could move the ball up and down the field. At times, it looked like the offense was lost. And Dan said it to start here. I mean, that interception that he threw was telegraphed the whole way. I still think he has trouble going through his progression, Zach Wilson, and I think that if opposing defenses can see that, and we're talking about Mike Tomlin's defense in Pittsburgh in week 4, I know we're expecting a down year from Pittsburgh. Tomlin still hasn't had a losing season. I think that's going to be a disaster for Zach.
So, Dan, come back in here because the first 3 games, I'm very curious how optimistic you are that Zach is actually going to learn from Joe. Can you actually have this Zebra change his stripes in the first 3 games, playing against the Ravens, then at Cleveland, and then hosting Cincinnati?
Yeah, that's a great point. How much is he really going to change in 3 or 4 weeks as far as his skill set, his mindset, and all those things? Bill Parcells used to believe that you pick senior quarterbacks out of college. And when you look at Zach Wilson, not only did he come out after his junior year at 21 years old, he came out of BYU and he had a really good season against a makeshift schedule because of COVID, playing the likes of Troy and North Alabama and programs like that, Coastal Carolina, and they actually lost that game. So low level of competition in Division I, and the receivers were wide open. So as far as reading defenses, he didn't have to do that a lot because the first read was usually open and it was usually wide open. So he comes into the NFL. Think about it. He comes into a division with Buffalo, with Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier, 2 of the better defensive coaches, 2 times against them. And then you look at New England with Bill Belichick, and obviously Brian Flores in Miami was a very good and is a very good defensive coach. So the ability to process what he's looking at across the line is still a work in progress. It's not like he came out of the SEC like Joe Burrow or even Justin Herbert out of the Pac-12. And those 2 quarterbacks were seniors, as I mentioned, the Bill Parcells theory. So he has a lot of work to do. But as far as the daunting schedule, I just don't know how tough Cleveland's going to be. Jacoby Brissett is more of a number 2. When you look at Pittsburgh in week 4, who knows what their quarterback situation is going to be. Baltimore in week 1 is a very tough out, don't get me wrong. I'm not sure how tough the first 3-4 weeks really is when you look at it closely.
Dan, when you look at this team, we had our Gang Green preview here at Pix 11. We chatted with C.J. Mosley, Michael Carter. They view themselves as being a playoff contender. Do you think this team could be a contend, play meaningful games second half?
I think if Flacco looked really good in training camp. I know people will look at that preseason game against the football Giants and say he didn't play that well against the Giants backups. But let's not forget that first series when Flacco went out there. They were moving the football. That was a nice series, and then Michael Carter fumbled. But to me, looking at that first series, that was pretty good. And then you look at the fact that they didn't do much more with Flacco, but that offensive line, and we have breaking news today about that offensive line. Dwayne Brown, that was his first game after a couple of days of practice, and that offensive line against the Giants had not played together, so they were not terrific in that game. And now it comes out that Dwayne Brown, the left tackle signed to replace Mekhi Becton, Well, obviously George Fant was going to replace Mekhi Becton, but then they signed Dwayne Brown, who's only played left tackle. So they moved, Fant to right tackle. Well, now Dwayne Brown is dealing with a shoulder injury. He's iffy for Sunday. So more offensive line questions for the Jets. But I think Flacco looked good this summer. He can still sling it. He hasn't lost any arm strength. Obviously not the most mobile guy. But I think he goes through his progressions better, and he's more accurate right now than Wilson is.
Dan, you Eurostep the question. Are they a playoff team?
Oh, yeah, it's true. I think that, it's interesting. Joe Douglas is smart about this, because if the GM says, I think they need to make the playoffs, then it doesn't happen. Then it's a big controversy in New York. So he always says meaningful games in December. They should be playing meaningful games in December because they have a lot of talent on this roster. You saw they got 7 players claimed on the final cutdown, and then that points to the fact that this was the most stacked roster they've had in some time. So to me, they should be a wild card contender. But I think that would be more apt to happen with Joe Flacco than Zach Wilson at this point.
So I think, Dan, for this to be a successful season, they need to know whether Zach Wilson is the franchise quarterback moving forward. Do you feel like they put enough good offensive skill players around him to fairly assess that?
Yeah, no doubt about it. They have a lot of explosive weapons. And one thing you saw all summer were the exploits of Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, the first-round pick out of Ohio State this year, Elijah Moore's second-round pick out of Ole Miss last year. These are the kind of guys, not only good receivers at running routes and catching the rock out there, but really good on bubble screens and jet sweeps, all those gadget plays, both electrifying in the open field. So with Zach Wilson or Flacco, you just get these guys the ball like a good point guard and let them do their thing in the open field. Corey Davis exploded after Joe Flacco took over. Corey Davis and Zach Wilson, aside from that deep pass against Tennessee, they never seemed to be on the same page. But Flacco and Corey Davis, the last 3 weeks in practice, and they just look like they are on the same page. And Corey Davis is now playing like people expected him to when they gave him the big money last year to come over from Tennessee. So, also the tight end Conklin had a really big summer, with Wilson and then also with Flacco. So I think there's plenty of weapons on this offense, and obviously at running back, they've got a lot of talent with Michael Carter and Breece Hall.
All right, let's go around the table. Is Zach Wilson the franchise quarterback for the Jets? What is this season going to tell us about that? Let's start with Joe.
So the question is he the franchise
Is
quarterback?
he? Will he be? At the end of the season, will he be convinced?
So you want me to tell you if a banged-up quarterback who's not playing in Week 4 can be the franchise quarterback of this team?
Moving forward, yes.
Yeah.
That is what tells us whether this is a successful season or not.
I mean, I got to go. I'm basing it on what I've seen. I got to go no. I mean, why can I expect him? I haven't seen any glimpses that make me think he's going to take this massive jump forward in year 2. So at this point, if I have to decide now, I'm going to go with more likely not.
Oh, jeez.
I'm going to say yeah.
Thank you.
Wow.
Joe, you can learn from the moves.
No. I think
He's a positive guy.
Yeah, no, not necessarily all the time, but I would say that I would say that the talent is there. I know the concerns. Dan ran through the concerns about where he is, experience level, competition to play collegiately. Didn't really jump off the field last year when he played, but I think by the end of the season, I think there's enough around him to where he'll start to build the confidence level and take better use of that talent. So I think at the end of the season, you'll have a positive answer about Wilson.
Yeah, I'm conflicted on how to answer. I do think that Zach is going to be the starter for next season. If Daniel Jones could be given another lifeline, I think Zach will also be given another lifeline.
Yeah, but there's a difference between Daniel Jones and Zach Wilson, right? Is that the fact that the owner of the Giants came out and said we did nothing around him to help him in any way, whereas the Jets, we're all saying right now, have gone out and done everything to help him in year 2.
They have, and they've given him weapons, but DJ also now has weapons as well.
Yeah, I mean, this year, finally in year 5. Yeah.
Yes, he does have weapons, but I don't think that you usually will be able to assess if someone is a franchise quarterback automatically after 2 years unless they're just out of this world great like a Justin Herbert and other players. Usually the timeline is 3 years, and that's when you can make a decision.
Well, but usually you show enough.
Right, is the arrow at least pointing up, right? Are we seeing steady improvement?
So that's why I said that at least he will be the starter for next year. I do think they're going to give him another opportunity because I don't personally see this as the only stretch as he will be injured. I think there will be another period during this season that he possibly can be injured and miss some games.
Yeah, usually, but if it takes you, usually you're just a quarterback. and there's no doubt he could play in the NFL, but if you're looking at a franchise quarterback, guys usually show enough in their first 2 years to where you say, you know what, we've made it right. We've got the answer at that position. But I can understand the trepidation when you look at it. He's going to be given more time because unless this season they win 2 games this year, Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh are still going to be here.
And they're tied to him, right? Yeah, they're tied to him, so.
Yeah, and even when Dan mentioned their wild card team, maybe that's fool's gold for other people, but I just do not see that whatsoever. I think at best this team is going to be in 3rd place in the division. Dan, that is what they should reach for. It's still being under 500.
They're not going to be under 500. Dan, what do you think?
Okay, Todd.
Dude, always be optimistic.
No, let's be realistic. Just because we cover New York teams.
How are they going to be a wild card team under 500?
All right, Todd.
And Dan said they'd be a wild card team.
That's
or at
one
least
person.
But he's the expert on the panel.
Sure.
Dan, being the expert on the panel.
And the Knicks are going to win a championship. Yeah.
No. That's not happening. Dan, what do you think?
Dan almost jumped out of his seat there. Go ahead, Dan.
No, I said the caveat was with the veteran quarterback that could compete for a wild card. I don't think with Zach Wilson. Think about it. Last year, Zach Wilson completed 55.6% of his passes. You can't win doing that in the league because when you complete 55% of your passes, that means every other pass is essentially hitting the ground. You can't sustain drives that way. And you also have to wonder a little bit about the maturity. You know, Robert Saleh said something at the owners' meetings in Palm Beach in late March. And I think they all kind of backed off it a little bit. He says, we needed to own the playbook at a faster clip. So that was like, whoa, where'd that come from? And then you had the situation, I don't want to get into the page 6 type stuff, but the social life stuff and all that stuff in the offseason. And then I'm sure you guys read Phil Mushnick because he writes about you guys at times. Phil Mushnick had an interesting point about why was he sitting in the booth injured during the Giants game with no coaches and no headset? Like, wouldn't that be a great learning experience to be monitoring that and being coached up during the game?
He wanted to see the all 22 from up high, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you have to be the guy at the quarterback position if you're going to be successful in the NFL. You have to open the building at 5 or 6 in the morning during the season, and you got to close it at midnight. That's what Drew Brees, all the greats do. I'm not saying he doesn't work hard, but I don't know if he's at that level of work. When the coach says he's got to own the playbook at a faster clip, and then you have the offseason distractions and all that. And then I'll go back to that play, and I don't want to make a big deal about one play. We all have bad plays. I'm sure you guys have bad broadcasts sometimes. We all make mistakes. Todd has never had a bad broadcast as far as producing.
No, never.
We've all had that. But here's the point. When you're talking about a player who came off an offseason where we heard how hard he was working and how well he was playing. And not only did he work with the Jets coaches, he went out to L.A. to work with the quarterback guru, John Beck. And you come out in the preseason, and that's the pass you throw into triple coverage. Once again, it's only one play, but that was a junior high throw, guys.
Right.
All right, I got 2 questions to finish this up. I want to whip it around the horn, as Moose says on Yankee Nation. First of all, who's going to win this weekend at MetLife, the Jets or the Ravens? Joseph?
I'm going to go with the Jets. I think that they pull off the upset in week 1. It's Flacco's revenge game.
Stay off the weed.
I think that Lamar Jackson is not happy about the contract there, and I don't know how that is going to play in the locker room. And I think the fact that you've got a new defensive coordinator over there with Wink Martindale, obviously over here now with the Giants. I think things are going to be interesting over there, and I think that the Jets could pull off the upset.
Yeah, I'm going to go Baltimore.
The realist at the table.
Just put a period there, Mark, and I'm going to go Baltimore as well.
Dad?
I think I'm going to go with the Jets, and I'll tell you why. The first week is the mother of all game plans, if you will, and the other team doesn't know what to expect. So I think offensively, with all these weapons that we were talking about before, and Joe Flacco pulling the trigger as far as hitting those weapons with passes all over the field, I think they can do something there. The defense has a lot more talent than it did last year.
So, Dan, finally, what do you think about the Jets this season? What's the season prediction?
Well, it depends who the quarterback is. I know that's a cop-out, but it's a quarterback-driven league. You got to know who's under center. When I said they could compete for a wild card, that would be with Joe Flacco, the veteran. We've seen so many quarterbacks in their late 30s. You go back to Rich Gannon And I'm not comparing to the Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, but they're in that age bracket too. The point being, Vinny Testaverde with the Jets, you do some of your best work if you're physically okay and your legs are good, because mentally you're at the top of the growth curve. You've seen every defense they could throw at you. So if Flacco is the quarterback, I think they could compete for a wild card. I would say just meaningful football in December. That's kind of what Joe Douglas brings up. That's competing for a wild card.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good stuff, and I agree with you. I don't think that they should use this season as a petri dish. In Flacco, we trust. Let's move over to Big Blue, another team with some quarterback issues. Moose, right now, do you think the team is in better hands with Daboll and Shane?
Yeah, I think all the early returns you like. I think they're honest with you. There's no expectations on the year. It's different. I mean, you see a lot of optimism with young head coaches or first-year head coaches in the National Football League when they take over an organization. It doesn't have a big hurdle to overcome. When you look at the Joe Judge 2 years, they were a disaster. But I like Shane. I like Daboll. I like the relationship they have, the changes they've made. They've been handed a tough hand here. Gettleman kind of ran havoc on the organization. But I think the early returns here are pretty good. I think you feel optimistic if you're a Giant fan.
Justin?
Optimism. That's a tricky word right now during this time of the year. That big word of if, optimism, and hope. I do think that they are in a better place. But the Giants have also been through this. Moose already mentioned how they weren't dealt the best hand, specifically with the salary cap. They made some adjustments, some tough cuts, and had to weed away with a few players. But honestly, the whole results thing is going to be what determines how well this coaching staff, as well as this new regime, is going to be. And I think that unless DJ or Saquon can step up, then they're pretty much going to be hitting the reset button once again for next year's draft, which at least has more quarterbacks in it.
So, Joe, will they be setting the reset button? What do you think about Daniel Jones and his ability to step up this season?
Yeah, I think he's going to have probably the best season of his career, but I still think they're going to hit the reset button. I think that, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll and the Marius Tisches, everybody's admitted they didn't do anything around Daniel Jones. So you can't get much worse than what they've done previously. And so I think he's going to have a good year. On his part, he's got to cut down on the turnovers, right? And I think he can do that. I think there have been glimpses with Daniel Jones that I've liked. He's an athletic quarterback. I've seen him make some good throws. It's that one bad turnover, that fumble sometimes because he's gotten hit from the blind side because he can't feel the pressure in the pocket. Some of that's on him. And then maybe a couple times he's tried to force the throw. I think he leads the league in turnovers since he's come into it. The Giants do while he's been quarterback there. So he needs to cut down on that. But I still think at the end of the year, it's going to be best for both Daniel Jones and the Giants that they part ways.
When you say his best career year, what do you mean by that?
The best year of his career.
Easily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not saying he's going to be a Pro Bowler or anything like that. But look, I think his first year was probably the best we've seen of Daniel Jones, and it wasn't that good.
Yeah,
right.
It was just really the first game, Tampa Bay.
Well,
Yeah.
Outside, yeah.
He's got a lot more talent around him, though, this year.
He had talent in Tampa too.
I don't know if he has a lot more talent around him. The line, arguably, yeah.
And
But
that
they've
makes a
been
big
reshuffling.
difference.
Yeah.
That could keep him healthy and upright.
I don't know what we have up the middle in this line. I think on the ends, right? I think obviously with Neal and
They're
Thomas.
still figuring that out.
But I think up the middle, look, and that's the worst thing for a quarterback, right? Is when you get pressure up the middle. I think because he's an athletic quarterback, he's built to deal with it if he gets that, and the ends can contain, then he'll be okay because he'll be able to escape some of that pressure up the middle. But I'm not sold on the Giants' offensive line this year. I think in the future, building forward, they've got pieces, but they don't have that cohesion yet.
No, they don't have it. Yeah, I think it's the best we've seen in years. I'm not telling you they're the best offensive line in the NFL, but I think when you look at the tackles, you look at what Neal's going to be at the right side.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Alleviates a lot of stress for those guys to be able to handle rushers one-on-one. I think they made it a direct point to try and improve the offensive line. It's not like 2011, 2007 in terms of cohesion, that kind of a group, but it's significantly better than the sieves we've seen here for like the last 3 or 4 years because they've been putrid.
I agree, and I think Neal's going to be really good at the NFL level. But
Agreed.
look at the first year for Andrew Thomas, right? Like he struggled in his rookie year, and that's going to be hard when you have to deal with complex pickups and unique blitzing that you're not used to at the college level. So I think long term Neal will be fine. I expect some early struggles from him, and ultimately I think that's that Daniel Jones, again, they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
I agree with you guys. I'm optimistic long term about them. Short term, I'm tempering that optimism.
So, Moose, if the line is going to be better, what do you see from Daniel Jones this year?
I think we'll play. I think he's going to answer some of the critics. Listen, I've been a fan of Jones. I think he's kind of in the beauty in the eye of the beholder. I think it's what you want to see. I think there's enough there with Daniel
totally
Jones.
Agree.
If you like him, he's shown you. And if you want to say that Daniel Jones is a terrible quarterback, he's shown you enough of that as well. So you kind of can go
Jekyll and Hyde,
right? So it's really the way that you decide to look at Daniel Jones. He's got a year to prove it, and the difference is, say with him and Zach Wilson in this city is that this brain trust has no emotional connection to him. So he's got 17 games. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to take care of the football, pocket presence, game slowing down, all of those things. I think he's got probably, outside of Shermer, who I think was a good offensive play caller, I think these, with Daboll and Kafka, I think he's got probably the best combination to try and get the best out of him because it's a big prove-it year because they would make no bones about moving on from Daniel Jones after this season if they don't look at him as being the real deal.
So speaking of someone else they might move on from, I've got it on good word that the great Kenny White, the Wizard of Odds, is going to put money on Saquon Barkley being the comeback player of the year this year. Moose, what do you think about Saquon this year?
Yeah, I'm rooting for him. I mean,
you picked him up in fantasy too, right?
Yeah, I did. I think everybody that you talk to, he's physically there, emotionally there. I think that, like we talked about, the offensive line will be better. Now the question is, can he stay healthy the entirety of the season? This might be it for Saquon in New York regardless because, if he has a great year, can you envision the Giants in the salary cap situation paying him the kind of money that he's going to be wanting in free agency? In all likelihood, probably not. So if both guys, Jones and Barkley, have big-time years, they're more likely, they're going to keep the quarterback over the running back.
And that would be the worst thing for New York, right? Because they have a mediocre year because these two guys have big years, and then you're probably going to have to let one, if not both of them, go. So you don't have the draft capital then in that scenario either.
Yeah.
That would be the worst case scenario, I think, for the Giants.
Well, and just look at the first game that Shane went out there and scouted this past weekend was the Ohio State game, right? To see C.J. Stroud.
So, first of all, tune in 10:30 on Saturday night to see all three of these fine gentlemen and the New York Blitz, and you'll see Kenny White. So you talk about giving up draft capital, and the worst thing that could happen. They had a good draft. They've got some good young players. Who do you guys expect to flash this year, Justin?
Wan'Dale Robinson. I like that pick for them. He's an explosive player, came out of Kentucky. You could see them using him in a role similar to Kadarius Toney, but in the slot, also getting him in the backfield with some end-arounds. But I think Wan'Dale could be a really solid pickup for them. And it's another weapon for Daniel Jones. And any type of scheme Daboll can bring for what he did in Buffalo is only going to alleviate the pressure to keep the defense on their toes.
Moose?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the first pick. I'm going to go, master of the obvious, Thibodeau. They need a defensive impact player. I know he's a little bit banged up dealing with that knee, but, would love to see him kind of develop into that guy that, that Micah Parsons down in Dallas, Von Miller in his prime with the Denver Broncos, that kind of a player. I'd love to see that. So I'm rooting for Kayvon Thibodeau. Love the personality, kind of add a little bit something to that Giant locker room as well. They're embracing that, down at the Giants practice facility. So to me, I'm rooting for Kayvon Thibodeau.
Moose, who do you like in him too from the Giants' past?
Listen, I'm older than Justin and Joe, but
not older than me.
Not older than you.
Not even close.
No. But when you think about Giants football, growing up and going to Giant Stadium, you think about great linebackers. You think about Harry Carson, Carl Banks, Pepper Johnson, Lawrence Taylor, Gary Reasons. The Giants had an unbelievable set of linebackers. And I can remember, being there watching LT wreak havoc, Gary Reasons with the big fourth down stop on Bobby Humphrey in the snow in Denver, watching Harry Carson, toward the tail end of his career, Carl Banks doing what he did. So that's what, you thought about the Giants, and their identity was running the football, and we were going to run it down your throat, Joe Morris, Otis Anderson, Rodney Hampton, and we were going to get after you defensively. And the Giants have not really had that since the last time they won the Super Bowl. That's it. 2007, 2011. Tuck could have been the MVP of the game in 2007. That NASCAR line, they were able to get after it, and they were able to run the football when they needed to. So that's why I think you have to get back to kind of what the identity is. That's why kind of the draft choice of Kayvon Thibodeau, I loved it because you need those kind of impact players, especially in the Northeast late in the season.
And the offensive lineman, Joe.
Yeah, I think Thibodeau's the choice, right? He can have such a huge impact on this team. I like the pairing with Ojulari, too.
Yeah.
I think he really popped as a rookie last year. And I think if they can get pressure on the quarterback, we know the secondary is going to need help this season. So they need to get there quick so that those guys on the back end don't have to cover so long. But I think Thibodeau will be able to do it. Before he got hurt in that preseason game, it didn't look like they could stop him. And if he's there already, and he, despite his verbose nature, he's pretty humble. When it comes to his talk about himself in football, he seems willing to put in the work. All the veterans have raved about him. So if you can be that bright personality and remain humble, that's a rare combination. And I think he's ready to back it up on the field.
I think the Moose has that rare combination. So what I see with the Giants right now is a lot of question marks. Can Daniel Jones step forward? Can Saquon step forward? What about the young players, Neil, Thibodeau, Justin? Can it all come together this year? The NFC least is terrible except for the Commanders. Do you think that they can play meaningful football by beating up on the NFC East in December?
No, I don't think so. I think that they'll have a chance possibly to at least have a decent showing early on in the schedule, but I think later on things will progress and they won't hit rock bottom, but it will not be a winning season. So if I'm going to be a prognosticator, let's say 7 wins, which
Joe,
honestly is their
receipts?
best.
Absolutely.
Is their best season.
Got a whole draw full of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Like
their
a
best
CBS.
season since they've been to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they're anywhere from 6 to 8 wins. I think that's it, and I think the Giants are being open with anybody that asks. There's no, they're not placing any kind of, hey, we're going to the playoffs this year.
No, they're doing just the opposite.
Yeah, they're basically.
No, but you asked Dayball and Shane
they're
what's a
telling you-
successful
they're telling
season on
you
the
that-
special. What did they tell you?
Well, basically, they're telling you that, progress, representing the organization on the field and off the field the right way. I think that's really going about their business the right way. I think it'll look a lot better. Has to. Last year at the end for Judge was an embarrassment.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
So-
Can't get worse than taking a knee.
Yeah, I think
Well, his post-game press conferences
I
were
think,
worse.
Well, I think it's going to look like a modern offense. It didn't under Garrett. And I think defensively, even though Graham was a really good defensive coordinator, I think Wink Martindale is going to give this team an identity, bringing pressure from all different angles. So it's going to look significantly better for the Giants, even though it might not look great when we look at the win-loss column at the end of the year.
Joseph?
They have the easiest schedule in the NFL right now, according to last year's records. But as the Giants are looking at the other teams on their schedule, the other teams are looking at the Giants as
Giants
that
look
team
like
on
the
their
homecoming
schedule.
game, yeah.
Right, exactly. So I think you have to keep that in mind. I do think that the NFC East is down. I think people are sleeping on Philly a little bit because I think they have a
picking up
monster
Brown
offseason
was
too.
ridiculous, yeah.
And they had a great
Jalen
draft
Hurts
as
could
well.
take a step forward, I agree.
So it's going to be interesting to see what they do out there. But as far as the Giants are concerned, look, I'm right on the same page. I think 8, I'd be really impressed, a little bit surprised if they got that high. I'm looking at probably 5 or 6 wins, and I think you call that a success. But the whole thing about getting better every day, that scared me when I heard that, because that was all Joe Judge said, like, for his entire tenure here. Is I just want to look at this team and know we're getting better every single day.
It is different, though, with Dayball
Oh,
and
no,
Judge.
it's 100% different.
Dayball's
Listen,
got
I
more of a
have faith in these
personality.
guys.
Yeah.
They have, and they're down to earth, and they, what they have done in their track record up in Buffalo. I mean, that roster right now, top to bottom, is one of the most talented rosters.
Yeah.
Any GM around the league will tell you that. And so if they could build that there, they can build it here too.
No doubt.
But I do think that's true. I think with any organization or any walk of life, all you could do is get a little bit better each and every day. And I think that's the goal.
Yeah.
So, but I do believe that we've got the right brain trust with the Giants. With that being said, I think 6 wins is really about where they'll finish. 2 games behind the Washington Commanders. So will they get one of those wins, one of those 6 wins, Mark, against Tennessee?
I do. I think so. I think they're a live dog.
Wow.
Getting the 6. Yeah, it's more
The Moose.
Well,
I love it.
It's more of a case of Tennessee without their best edge rusher. I don't love Ryan Tannehill as a quarterback. Derrick Henry could have a huge bounce back year. No A.J. Brown at wide receiver. I think it looks distinctly different for Tennessee, coming off a disaster. I mean, Tennessee was the number 1 seed in the AFC, and they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals, and Tannehill, said he was haunted by his performance for the most of the offseason. So I could see the Giants surprising Tennessee. You look at it, historically speaking, week 1 in the NFL, it's a lot of dogs that usually win week 1 as teams are trying to find themselves first couple weeks of the year. I think the Giants are live on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're going to be able to get the pressure on Daniel Jones that is going to be the key to this Giants season because you mentioned Landry's out. They also lost Saffold from last season. So this isn't the same Tennessee team. I mean, look at their wide receivers. Yes, Brown, Julio Jones also gone from there, although he wasn't really ever healthy for Tennessee to make it happen. And let's not forget, when Tennessee was banged up with a roster that's going to look a lot like the one that they're playing with this week, they lost last year to the Jets.
True.
When they had the number 1 seed in the AFC. So if you can't put up the points to put away the team, you have a puncher's chance, and I think the Giants will have a puncher's chance in this one as well.
So I got punched a lot last year for being overly optimistic. I don't think the Giants have a chance in Tennessee.
Okay.
They were the number 1 seed last year. I'd like to leave everybody with this. Make your appointment Saturday night, 10:30 for the Moose, Joe and Justin on the New York Blitz. We added David Tyree this year, and he's fantastic. Sunday night, 11 o'clock, New York Sports Nation, where we will have Dan, who you heard here, and Art Stapleton from Tennessee, hopefully talking about a win. And then Yankee Nation, we've got a big show at 11:30. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. We'll talk to you next week.
That DVR is going to be filled up.